Hello, my name is Adam Aganya and welcome to my video on integration. Alright, so when I hear the word integration, I immediately think of the social movements that took place years ago. I think about the movie, mostly think about the movie of Remember the Titans, where the white students and the black students had to start going to the same school and learn how to coexist with each other. However, I believe that integration goes far beyond that now. I believe that integration is the mixing of students of different backgrounds, whether students consist of different races, religions, sexes, sexual orientations, ableisms, whatever. These students are all mixed together within a school vicinity and are forced to get along and coexist with one another. So coincidentally, the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 and the new Immigration Reform Acts occurred within the same time frame. So with these new reforms, the fourth wave of migration started and more immigrants began to move to America. This meant that schools were going to have to deal with more than just integrating students from different races. They were going to have to integrate students that were new to the country and possibly have little to no knowledge of the English language. So above not knowing the dominant language of the country, students were going to have to assimilate to the American culture, and as was seen in the article by Rong and Praisel, there were additional conflicts that grew from this assimilation. Immigrant parents and communities were conflicted because they had to lose their native tongues and their culture and embrace and embody the new American culture. And schools were not teaching any multicultural curriculum or bilingual instruction. It was all just Americanized, English-only instruction that they had no choice or say on. And as we saw in the New York Times video, schools started implementing busing to integrate students. So with this busing system, students from various backgrounds and demographics and socioeconomic backgrounds were able to be integrated. And as a result, it was seen that students were improving because they were able to learn from one another, and there was enough resources available, and it was essentially an equal education kind of deal. However, since then, it has been found that students hadn't improved as much as parents had hoped, and as a result, they started pulling their students out, and then came the traditional neighborhood school system. And most of the students that were pulled out from the Charlotte's school, as was seen in the video, were all, like the guy said, the white flight and the bright flight. So basically students from middle class families and up that wanted their children to have a better education and not be integrated with students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And as the video also points out, students are still segregated today, but by different means. So like I was saying about them being segregated and being pulled out and all that. Since schools are not on a busing system, student demographics are made up from neighboring areas, meaning that students from a higher socioeconomic background will all attend the same school, while students from a lower socioeconomic backgrounds attend a different school. And as a result of these students attending different schools, the overall academic performance is vastly different. There are less resources available to students coming from families with little money as opposed to those coming from wealthier families. And as the New York Times video points out, the students that are suffering mostly are Black and Latino families. And personally, in subbing for my own high school district, looking at the different schools and student bodies, I can see how this is still an existing issue. Looking at the demographics of the northern schools and comparing them to those of the southern, there is a large gap between the two. The northern schools are composed of like higher socioeconomic families, while the southern schools are composed of lower socioeconomic families, and the lower socioeconomic families are also composed of um, immigrant families that are new to the country. What I have found is that the northern schools perform higher than the southern, and I have also been told that the students that are new to the country or are English language learners are being bused to southern schools. So, for instance, in my student observation classes, my master teacher, I'm the student teacher, my master teacher, she had a student in her EL class that was not at the bridging point, because at Ontario High School, that's where most of the English language learners are, or are close to being. And so he was pretty much still learning English, like he had no English knowledge whatsoever. So she tried to convince the student to transfer to Chaffey High School, because that is where all the newcomers, or what they call the new tigers, go to start learning the basic English language and then move up from there. And then once he started to feel more comfortable with the English language, then he could go back to Ontario if he felt like he was adequate enough in the English language. Yeah. So yeah, it is segregation is still an issue today. It is still a large part of our society, unfortunately. And thank you for listening to my TED Talk.